This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Welcome back to Inside the Paint. And Ira's already getting called out this morning for spreading fake news. How dare you, Ira? Now, this is the question. I just think there needs to be a little bit of clarification. WZG says, Ira, there's no way that the Pistons would take Duncan Robinson for Jeremy Grant. Stop spreading fake news. I think add some context to this here. I think what you're saying, and again, the aggregators go wild with the aggregators. Sun Sentinel's Ira Winderman says the Pistons want Duncan Robinson in exchange for Jeremy Grant. No, I think what we're trying to say is if there are places to improve the team, it's not that it would be a Duncan Robinson for Jeremy Grant straight up sort of deal. But if you're looking to move one contract, what's the type of player or who is a particular player that could be the centerpiece in some sort of a deal? It might hurt if you have to move other guys in order to facilitate that. I mean, and here's an example. Like, let's say Detroit said, we love that Omer Yurtseven guy. We absolutely love what we're seeing out of him. You put him in a deal with Duncan Robinson, and those are the things that we just aren't privy to. But to make it clear, I don't think Ira or anybody else was saying that the Pistons are going to take Duncan straight up for.
No, I'm just saying, what can he move? What would he like? You know, these are all pie in the sky. Detroit will have better offers. I mean, they could try to trade him in a package and just take on a little more salary ballast and go for someone like Patrick Williams of Chicago, who's injured right now, but has shown he's the young kind of player Detroit can build with. He was good in Chicago when he first played. Look, if you're asking me for simplicity, I think someone like Thaddeus Young, who's riding away on the bench in San Antonio, would be fine. But teams like that want draft choices. Well, the Heat don't have draft choices. They don't have something. Now, might they have a young player who San Antonio, obviously like an Omer Yurtseven, who could look at and say they like that? Sure. And you probably could do a deal like that where you take an Omer, if you're trading him, I'm not trading him, I'm just saying, and you throw in another piece to match the salaries. Do you want to trade an Omer Yurtseven for 1 year, not even a 1 year rental, for a 6-month rental or something like that? But I will tell you this, until I know enough about Markieff Morris and where he stands and who he is and what he does after all this time missed, if I had someone like a Thaddeus Young on my roster, I would feel better that if PJ Tucker can't start or is in foul trouble and teams are playing more of a traditional 4, that I would have that kind of length to throw in there also, someone who can hit the 3, someone who's had his proven NBA moment. So I'm talking about that kind of player. Look, Detroit can do and will do better and likely will do something. But I'm just saying from a Heat standpoint, you don't have a lot of chips because you have the high-end salaries of Bam, of Kyle Lowry, of Jimmy Butler, which are hard to move unless you're getting an elite player and the Heat don't want to. And you have all these $2 million contracts like a KZ Okpala who don't make deals because they're not big enough numbers unless you're making a tiny deal, you know, like we saw that Denver made with Boston and San Antonio, you know, something a little simpler for a deal like that. Otherwise, there's just not a lot. You want to be in that mid-teen sweet spot making a deal.
And WZG, look, your first point is the one that we're getting to, not the last one. You say you need to give up picks and players to Robinson to get a player like Grant. Yes, and that's what we're saying. It's the Robinson contract that would facilitate a potential deal, but it would cost a lot more. Your last point, but Thaddeus Young for Duncan Robinson is more fair than Jeremy Grant. Yeah, but you're not sending Duncan Robinson for Thaddeus Young. I mean, that's kind of, there are levels to all of this, and that's kind of what we're saying is if you're going to try to improve this roster, that's a contract that you would use. And then there are other pieces around that, whether it's really attractive pieces, like, again, potentially somebody like an Omer Yurtseven who's on a really cheap contract, and another team may have loved what they've seen with that. So that's when you're trying to figure all this out. You need to get the big chunk of salary that matches first, and then figure out the rest. And those are the type of players that you're looking at. David, good morning, Ira and Clay. What are the chances that Caleb Martin takes over Tyler Hero's role in the future as sixth man coming off the bench? And at what point do you think Tyler needs to start?
I don't think Tyler needs to start. I think every team needs a instant offense boost like Tyler can give you. And a matter of fact, if you were to move Tyler in the starting lineup, say for Duncan Robinson, just for argument's sake, I don't think you would have that on the second unit on this roster. Caleb Martin's not a flat-out, cold-blooded scorer. That's not what he does. So all of a sudden, then you're assuming Victor Oladipo's not back, then you're looking at the second unit. You have a Max Strus, you'd have a Duncan Robinson, you'd have a Caleb Martin, you'd have a Dwayne Dedmon. but you won't have that instant offense that when you're trailing at the start of a game 22-8 and Jimmy and Kyle aren't making shots and you need someone to bring in, Tyler's perfect for that role. It's almost like Eric Spoelstra now is going out of his way to make sure he doesn't have to start him again. Gabe Vincent started the other day for Kyle Lowry instead of Tyler Hero, even with Tyler playing as more of a playmaker. So I think when you look at a situation like that and you look at things like that, I think he has his role. Sixth man is a role. We started the show talking about how backup center was a role. Sixth man is an NBA role unto itself as well. Tyler fits that perfectly. He has an extension window after this season. He will get a boatload of money, as he should. It'll be close to Bam's money. And then he'll have to decide who we paying and who are we not paying. But you know what? I have no issue paying that kind of money for a sixth man. Because to me, a sixth man basically is your sixth starter anyway. He's going to play starters minutes. And what Tyler Hero does in that role, right now he's doing it as well as any NBA sixth man.
All right, Ira, tell me that I'm dumb. Tell me that I'm wrong. Scream at me. Tyler Hero is the Heat's best offensive player. Go.
It's funny you used a word there, and you can substitute another word and it changes. Tyler Hero is the Heat's best scorer. Ira agrees. Tyler Hero is the Heat's best offensive player. I don't know if he has the facilitating, even with some of the assists he's had of a Kyle Lowry and a Jimmy Butler. And every time you get an assist, you're also adding 2 or 3 points to the mix as well. So I think there's a little difference. So if you're saying is Tyler Hero the Heat's best scorer? Yes. Can Tyler Hero lead the Heat in scoring? Yes. Because that's what he does. And Clay, that's what he's asked to do. Jimmy Butler might be the best offensive player because if I need 2 points or 1 point at the end of a game, I'll ask you this. You have Tyler on the floor, you have Jimmy on the floor. You're down 1 or you're down 2. Which player are you going to put the ball in his hands of those 2?
I mean, you want me to be honest right now?
Okay.
It's Tyler. It's Tyler. And it's not just that it's twofold. Number one, okay, we've seen the bag grow, right? Like we've seen him add some shots to the mix to where there is nowhere on the floor. Like if you see Jimmy, there are spots that he tries to get to. And that's what a lot of stars do. They have spots that they want to get the shot that they're comfortable with. And sometimes you're like, well, wait a minute, why is he stepping back a foot behind the 3-point line? Well, or 2 feet behind it. Sometimes players have those spots and they're comfortable with them. The thing that I'm noticing with Tyler is he doesn't have spots. Like anywhere on the floor, he is comfortable creating a little bit of space and getting to. Now, I think the issue with that is we have not seen him yet late in games with a long defender switched onto him with his only job being stop him from getting that shot that he wants. And now Jimmy Butler has. And sometimes Jimmy has succeeded in that. Sometimes he's fallen short. Like he succeeded the other night against Atlanta. But what I want to see now from Tyler, and this is the next step that I think will answer this question definitively, is does he get a shot? And I don't know that he does with this current roster as it's composed, because I think I don't know that Jimmy Butler would pull the Scottie Pippen and say, I'm not going in the game if Tony Kukoc gets the shot. But I do think that there's entitlement might not be the right word, but there is a feeling that, hey, I'm Jimmy Butler. I am the centerpiece of this team, and this is my time. So I guess what I would say is, if I were the coach and if I didn't have to deal with the other stuff that might go along with it, I'd probably give the ball to Tyler and just see what he can do a couple of times, especially in the regular season.
Couple of things there. If Tyler has the ball at the end of the game and Jimmy's open or has a better matchup, Tyler's passing the ball. I believe that. If Jimmy Butler has the ball at the end of the game and Tyler has the better matchup, I'm not so sure that Jimmy's passing the ball. I think he has that in him that it's him. Plus, in those situations, and that's why I left out the possibility of a 3-point game, but in a 2-point game or 1-point game, Jimmy Butler is more likely to get to the foul line. Jimmy Butler is more likely to get the foul call in his favor, simply because of the experience and the reputation. Those are 2 other factors, Clay, at the end of the game situation as well, that I think Jimmy Butler gives you the option. Make the shot, go ahead or tie the game, 2 or 1-point game, or get to the foul line. I've always liked that. I never liked the end of the games when Dwayne Wade would dribble, jump shot, all or nothing. Jimmy has done that at times also, but he also has that penetration game. He's very good at getting the foul call. So I need to see Tyler get a little bit more respect from the officials and around the league to know if he does that and he's flailing and he shouts and you pick it up on the microphone by the rim that he's going to get to the foul line also. Can he grow into that? Absolutely. Is he that right now at the last minute? I don't think so. I don't think Eric Spoelstra, unless they're just an overwhelming matchup in the favor of Tyler Hero, wouldn't go to Jimmy Butler. Part B of that equation is this. If you're playing straight through without a timeout, you're out of timeouts, the situation just calls to go. I'm not so sure that Tyler's on the floor for this reason. He's not the two-way player.
Right. I agree with that.
Him down to get to the foul line. De'Aaron Fox a couple of weeks ago, Sacramento into the game.
Yes.
All they're doing is switching. All you saw at the end of the game the other day in Toronto was Fred VanVleet running enough pick and rolls until he wound up with Tyler as his defender. Then he hits the three at the end, extends the game a little bit more. That's the difference also. Jimmy will be on the floor. So it's kind of weird. But to be an offensive closer, sometimes you have to be somewhat of a defensive closer, because now that you only get 2 timeouts in the final 2 minutes, you're not always playing after a timeout. Now that there's not officiating replay on every goddamn out-of-bounds call, there aren't those stoppages where even if you can't substitute, you can realign a little bit better. So that's part of the equation also. Jimmy Butler will always be on the floor. I'm not so sure Tyler Hero will be.
That's a great point. So let's say I would like to see him get a shot late game when you're talking about possession, and the timeouts are not an issue at that point. And like just some of the situations that we see where there's 8 seconds left, 12 seconds left, you're down 1, you get the ball at half court. So like the traditional game ending situation, that's where I'd like to see him get a shot. But you're exactly right. And by the way, this goes back to what this team can be if and when Victor Oladipo comes back anywhere near. I'm not even talking about 2018 Oladipo. I'm talking about a year ago Oladipo, and the guy that we saw in that Lakers game before he got hurt. What you can do with a lineup defensively of Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, Victor Oladipo, PJ Tucker, Bam Adebayo, and oh, by the way, we're not even talking about Caleb Martin, who has become an absolute menace defensively. So, you know, I just think that late game situations, we're talking about how deep this team is, but we're not just talking about who needs minutes. We're talking about end of game situation. What are your options? And you're right. Tyler Hero is somebody who you're not going to have on that end of the floor. But if you have a Victor Oladipo in those late game situations, man, that's going to be a really, if I'm Brooklyn, that's the team I don't want to see in the last 2 minutes of the game when I've got these stars that are used to you can kind of hunt your matchup. Yes. There's no one who can guard Kevin Durant one-on-one, but there's no team right now that can come close to guarding the 3 that Brooklyn has as well as Miami can, assuming they get Oladipo back.
So that's part B of the equation. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball. Eventually, you have to, it's funny how you mentioned, can Tyler Hero start? Unless the offense upgrades to that level, it's a hard thing to do in a tough position to put him in. But man, our opponents hunting out matchups at ends of games against Duncan Robinson, against Tyler Hero, to a lesser degree against Max Strus. So you have to factor that all in also, whether you'll be on the floor at the end of the game. Again, Tyler is young. You're talking about a 23-year-old player. You can grow. He has made strides every season, had that little backslide because he didn't have an offseason after the bubble. But he's shown there, like you said, whether it's his offensive game, there's more in his bag. He is willing to learn. He is willing to put in the extra effort. I think he could take another step. I agree.
I kind of like this. Jay Gelfand and WZG both kind of echo this. But what do you think of the comparison of John Havlicek for what Hero is doing right now? You think back, and obviously different players, but I think when you think of those Boston Celtics teams, one of the first guys that you think of is Hondo. I mean, obviously you're talking about the early years with Bill Russell and Bob Cousy, and then as things go on and that dynasty grows, when you get to the 60s, late 60s, early 70s part of that dynasty, Hondo is he's one of the names that you think of, but he's a guy who came off the bench. And I think the comparison isn't necessarily of the player, but it's you don't have to, on an elite team, be one of the first 5 guys on the floor to be thought of as one of the 2 or 3 most important players on that team and one of the stars of that team. And so I know Tyler Hero says he wants to start, but at some point, if he's in those games at the end and he's making big shots like we've seen over and over again, he's going to be one of the guys. And this team wins championships, multiple championships. Again, we're playing this pie in the sky game. He's going to be remembered on that level as one of the irreplaceable parts of this team. And honestly, I don't know that anybody's going to remember other than kind of as a Hondo historical footnote that, oh, he was a 6th man too. Like, he's not going to be thought of as a lesser player because he came off the bench.
What matters to players are the minutes. And if the minutes are starters' minutes, they don't care if they hear their name announced at the start. It's a matter of when they look at that box score, because we know that Eric Spoelstra has used plenty of placeholders. We know the Luke Babbitt role I keep referring to. We've seen guys like that. They start each half. Max Strus was that recently also. When he was starting, he basically seemed at the start of the first and third quarters. Maybe not so much anymore. That's not Tyler Hero's role. He's coming in to be a dynamic guy. When he's checking in midway through the first quarter, he's probably not checking out until midway through the second quarter. So he's playing his 12-minute unit, just not minutes 1 through 12, but rather minutes 6 through 18. And he's getting those anyway.
All right, coming up, we're going to look at the schedule that is upcoming tonight. The Heat have the Portland Trailblazers, but what's on the road ahead? And, obviously we don't have a timetable for Kyle Lowry, but what kind of impact can he make when he comes back? That and a lot more. Plus, hey, keep driving this, guys. You guys are doing great in the chat. We really enjoy it. That's all next right here on Inside the Paint.